Mira Kapoor arrived in Shimla on the last toy train of the season, the one that crawled up the mountains like an old man reluctant to reach home. October wind bit through her thin city coat, but she barely noticed. She had come back to sell the house she swore she'd never set foot in again. Cedar Lodge stood at the end of a narrow lane off the mall road, half hidden by deodar trees that had grown wild in the 12 years she'd been away. The colonial bungalow looked smaller than memory allowed, its green tin roof patched with rust, the wooden shutters warped. But the smell, damp wood, pine resin, and something faintly metallic, hit her like a slap. The house still remembered her. She was 32 now, a features editor at a Delhi magazine, known for writing sharp, unsentimental pieces about people who reinvented themselves. Ironic, considering she had spent a decade running from the person she used to be. The key turned too easily, as if the lock had been waiting. Inside, dust floated in the weak afternoon light. Everything was exactly where her grandmother left it the day she died. The grandfather clock frozen at 3:17, the Kashmiri carpets rolled against the wall, the brass Ganesh on the mantel wearing a cobweb crown. Mira dropped her bag and walked straight to the music room. The Steinway grand piano stood in the center, like a sleeping animal. She lifted the fallboard. The ivory keys were yellowed, but the middle C still carried the tiny scratch her nail had made when she was 9. She pressed it, a dull, sour note. Out of tune for 12 years. Mira had been a prodigy once. At 14, she played Carnegie Hall. At 16, she won the Rubinstein Youth Competition. At 19, she stopped. Not gradually. One morning in London, after her grandmother's funeral, she simply closed the lid and never opened it again. The official story was burnout. The real story was simpler. She was terrified of becoming her mother. Ananya Kapoor had been India's most celebrated pianist until alcohol and applause swallowed her whole. She died at 41 in a Mumbai 5-star hotel room, pills and a half-empty bottle of Black Label on the nightstand. Mira was 19, already taller than her mother, already better than her mother had ever been. The critics said so. The fear said, "You'll end the same." So she quit. Changed her degree to literature. Moved cities every 2 years. Told no one she could play. Now the bank was foreclosing on Cedar Lodge because her grandmother's medical bills had outlived her by a decade. Mira had 45 days to clear the house and sell it before the auction. She started with the attic. Old trunks, moth-eaten concert gowns, yellowed press clippings. A box labeled Mira, do not open in her grandmother's spidery handwriting. She opened it anyway. Inside, recital programs, a silver medal from Warsaw, and a stack of letters addressed to her in her mother's handwriting, never sent. The top one was dated 3 months before Ananya died. My dearest Mira, if you're reading this, I'm already the footnote you always feared I'd become. I was never brave enough to say I'm sorry while I was alive. I taught you perfection because I was terrified of mediocrity, and in doing so, I taught you terror. I stole your joy and called it discipline. Play again, Beta. Not for them. For you. The piano is the only place I was ever honest. Maybe it can be that for you too. Forgive me. Or don't. But don't punish yourself for my sins. Mama. Mira sat on the cold attic floor until dusk, reading every letter twice. Then she went downstairs and opened the piano again. She played the first piece she ever learned, a simple Bach prelude her mother used to hum while cooking. The notes came out clumsy, the muscle memory rusted shut. Her left hand betrayed her first, then her right. She stopped, furious, slammed the lid. The sound echoed like a gunshot. That night, she couldn't sleep. The house creaked the way it always had, as if breathing. At 2 a.m., she found herself back at the piano, playing by moonlight. Not Bach. Something new. Angry, jagged phrases that hurt to hear. She played until her fingers bled. The next morning a boy was sitting on the front steps. He looked about 11, skinny, wearing a school blazer 2 sizes too big. When she opened the door, he stood up quickly. "You're Mira Kapoor," he said. Not a question. She waited. "I'm Arjun. I live next door, well, down the hill. My grandmother knew yours. She said you used to play piano so loud the whole ridge could hear." He paused. I heard you last night. Mira felt her stomach drop. It's a private house. I know.
I'm sorry.
It's just, he pulled a battered violin case from behind his back. I play too. My teacher left for Canada, and no one here teaches violin anymore. I heard you, and thought maybe. He trailed off, cheeks burning. Mira wanted to say no. Instead, she heard herself ask, what were you working on? Beethoven's Spring Sonata. But the piano part is impossible without a pianist. She almost laughed. Of course it was the Spring Sonata. The piece her mother made her drill until her fingers cramped. Come tomorrow at 4, she said. Bring your violin. She told herself it was temporary. One afternoon. Then she'd send him away. Arjun arrived at 3:58 with homemade aloo parathas his grandmother forced on him. They played. He was raw, impatient, brilliant in flashes. She corrected his bowing, made him slow down, played the piano part with one hand while demonstrating phrasing with the other. For 2 hours the house filled with music again. When he left, the silence felt wrong. He came the next day. And the next. Word spread the way it does in small towns. Soon there were 4 children on the veranda, then 7. A teenage girl who sang Hindustani classical. A retired army colonel with a cello he hadn't touched since 1987. Even old Mrs. Dillon, 83, who insisted on playing Chopin waltzes badly, but with feeling. Mira found herself tuning the piano. It cost her half a month's salary to get a technician up from Chandigarh. She printed sheet music. She yelled when they were lazy and praised when they surprised her. She began composing again, fragments at first, then whole movements. One evening in November, snow started falling early. The power went out. They lit candles and played anyway. Arjun and Mira did the Kreutzer Sonata by flickering light, and when they finished no one spoke for a long time. After the children left, Mira sat alone in the dark house and cried for the first time since she was 19. December came. The bank sent final notices.
She had 1 week.
On the last evening, she gathered everyone in the music room. 23 people crammed in, children on the floor, adults standing. She told them the house would be sold. That this was the final class. Arjun stood up. We took a collection, he said, holding out an envelope thick with cash, mostly small notes and coins. It's not enough to save the house. But it's enough for 1 more month. Maybe 2. Mira looked at the envelope, then at the faces, some she barely knew, who had filled her grandmother's house with music again. She started to refuse, then stopped. There's another way, she said slowly. 3 days later the brass plaque went up on the gate. Cedar Lodge School of Music. Director, Mira Kapoor. Opening January 2026. Classes by donation. No child turned away. She took out a loan against her Delhi flat, negotiated with the bank, turned the dining room into a performance space, the old servants' quarters into practice rooms. The house would never be hers alone again. It would belong to every child who walked through the door carrying a second-hand instrument, and too much hope. On Inauguration Day, snow fell thick and silent. The colonel played cello, Mrs. Dillon mangled a waltz, Arjun and Mira opened with the Spring Sonata. When they reached the final movement, Mira looked out at the packed room, at the faces shining in candlelight, and realized something. She had come home to bury the past. Instead, the past had handed her a future. Afterward, Arjun lingered while others left. Ma'am, he said quietly, will you play something just for us? Something you wrote. She sat at the piano. For a moment her hands hovered, afraid. Then she began. It was the piece she had started the first angry night, transformed now, no longer jagged but soaring, tender, unafraid. When the last note died, the room was utterly still. Then Arjun whispered, That's the house. You wrote the house. Mira smiled through tears. No, she said. I wrote Coming Home. Outside, snow kept falling, covering the old wounds, making everything new. Cedar Lodge remembered everything, pain, loss, music, second chances, and now it had a voice again. Mira Kapoor had silenced herself for 12 years, afraid of becoming her mother's ghost. Instead, she became something her mother never managed to be: a teacher, a keeper of other people's dreams, a woman who finally understood that genius isn't perfection. It's courage.